had to switch to a different plan twice. And so it's really, really disappointing to see them continue to behave this way. Like you said, it's do as I say, not as I do. And this is just another example of that. They're driving around. They're not driving around in these cars. So.
Madison Jessiano, hey, you're great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you having you on.
Liz.
And thank you for having us in your homes. Thank you so much for watching. Lou Dobbs is next right here on the Fox Business Network. Have a good night.
Good evening, everybody. This has been an historic day, and tomorrow promises to be as well. The Senate, and later tonight the Congress as well, will have passed what is an 1,159-page bill that is known innocuously as H.J. 31, appropriating monies for the Homeland Security Department, incorporating the Border Security Conference Committee's Border Security Compromise, so-called. That keeps the government running, no shutdown, if indeed President Trump does sign the legislation. The late hour of the congressional vote means the White House will take up the bipartisan, bicameral bill in all likelihood throughout tonight and prepare it for the president's signing tomorrow. We are told President Trump will sign the $333 billion legislation into law tomorrow morning and also sign an executive order. An executive order declaring a national emergency to begin to take dramatic steps to confront the crisis at our southern border. A national emergency. And importantly, President Trump's order means the border wall will be built. The president has gained as well important support from his own party to support his national emergency declaration. That support includes Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I've just had an opportunity to speak with President Trump, and he, I would say to all my colleagues, has indicated he's prepared to sign the bill. He will also be issuing a national emergency declaration at the same time. And I've indicated to him that I'm going to support the national emergency declaration.
And as the Republicans rally behind President Trump, the leaders of the radical Dems, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, seem shaken and unsure, and their remarks today protesting the president's action failed to note either presidential history or the simple, plain facts of it all.
There is word the president will declare a national emergency. I hope he won't. That would be a very wrong thing to do.
It's important to note that when the president declares this emergency, first of all, it's not an emergency, what's happening at the border. It's a humanitarian challenge to us. The president has tried to sell a bill of goods to American people. The president is doing an end run about Congress, about the power of the purse.
No, it's not about the power of the purse. It's about the Constitution and the National Emergencies Act of 1976. We'll take up that history and the law here tonight. President Trump clearly on the right side of both. More history made today. The Senate confirmed President Trump's nominee as Attorney General William Barr. Barr now faces among his first tests as the nation's top law enforcement official whether he will open investigations into the illegal surveillance against a presidential candidate, against a president, and intervention in a presidential campaign and election, and ultimately the attempted overthrow of a duly elected president of the United States. The top of the FBI and Department of Justice was ridden with political corruption. Former acting FBI Director Andy McCabe, who supported, as apparently did most of the FBI and DOJ leadership, Hillary Clinton, and who admits setting in motion much of the fabricated and politically motivated investigations of fictional Trump-Russia collusion and equally outrageous claims of obstruction of justice.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, and that was something that troubled me greatly.
McCabe outselling his book, making the rounds. He still claims his innocence. You may have noted the tone that he took. This is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, now confirms and backs the President of the United States. Senator Richard Burr declaring there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever of the fraudulent collusion narrative, a narrative constructed entirely by the Department of Justice and the FBI in their efforts to destroy President Trump. Tonight, we take up what has been another very good day for President Trump and the nation. With us tonight, top Republican strategist Ed Rollins, Fox legal analyst Greg Jarrett, senior fellow at the Center for the National Interest Christian Whiten, the Heritage Foundation's Hans von Spakovsky, among our guests here tonight. Our top story, without question, what has been a very good day at the White House. President Trump now in his 755th day in office. He is building political momentum by the day now toward 2020. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has more tonight from the White House.
In a statement, the press secretary saying he was taking the emergency action to ensure we stop the national security and humanitarian crisis at the border. The president is once again delivering on his promise to build a wall, protect the border, and secure our great country. In a joint statement, the Speaker of the House and Senator Chuck Schumer said declaring a national emergency would be a lawless act, a gross abuse of the power of the presidency.
The precedent that the president is setting here is something that should be met with great unease and dismay by the Republicans. And of course, we will respond accordingly when we review our options. First, we have to see what the president actually says.
The way it all played out was exactly what South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham suggested more than a month ago.
There's some things in there that are good for border security, and let him march toward filling in the gaps by executive action.
The spending bill gives the president $1.37 billion for pedestrian fencing in the Rio Grande Valley sector. But there are also restrictions that the president is bristling at. The bill stipulates that border wall cannot be built in several areas, including the National Butterfly Center west of McAllen. And it puts significant handcuffs on the president's discretion to make changes in spending. There are 354 instances in the bill where the phrases "none of the funds," "none of these funds," and none of the amounts are used to place restrictions on how the money can be used or moved around. Declaring an emergency may allow President Trump to move some money around from other departments to add to wall construction. It will almost certainly land him in the courts, but he will be able to tell his base he did all he could to make good on his central campaign promise. The House Speaker said it also sends a message to the Democratic base.
If the president can declare an emergency on something that he has created as an emergency, an illusion that he wants to convey, just think of what a president with different values can present to the American people.
White House officials say their attorneys have been looking at the ins and outs of an emergency declaration for weeks now. And while they do expect that this will end up in the courts and likely in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals jurisdiction, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders today said the White House is very prepared for a legal challenge. Lou?
As they well should be. John Roberts at the White House. Thank you, John. Well, joining us tonight to take up all of this, Heritage Foundation Senior Legal Fellow Hans von Spakovsky. Great to have you with us, Hans. Former Reagan White House Political Director, Fox Business Political Analyst Ed Rollins. And good to have you, as well as James Freeman, Assistant Editor at the Wall Street Journal, Fox Business Contributor. Hans, let's start with you. Nancy Pelosi ignoring, if we could put up quickly a full screen here of the number of national emergencies that have been declared by presidents, of which there are 31 still active. By the way, as Nancy Pelosi talked about for the base, the Democratic base, that they'll find out what they can do with emergencies, they weren't paying attention when President Obama himself declared 12 such national emergencies. The national emergency is clearly within the power of the President of the United States.
Well, yeah, in fact, Congress passed a statute, as you mentioned, in the mid-1970s that lays out the procedures for this. And, you know, that statute leaves it well within the discretion of the president to determine what is a national emergency. And I got to tell you, I think Nancy Pelosi has lost touch with reality if she doesn't think that the huge amounts of illegal drugs coming across the border, like fentanyl, which is now the leading cause of of overdose deaths in the United States, and the tens of thousands of illegal aliens constantly crossing over the border. If she doesn't think that's a crisis, like I said, she's lost touch with reality.
And losing, importantly, a political battle, because that is what this has all been about, Ed Rollins. This is a party that is coming behind, forming up behind President Trump. He is gaining before our very eyes momentum. I mentioned this is his 755th day in office. Guess how many days he's been under investigation by either committees, the FBI, or the special counsel? 755 days.
Probably another week or two before that.
We know months before that, months before that. But the reality is that he is gaining political momentum. The party is forming up behind him. The law is on his side. History is on his side. This is looking very good for the country to have a leader who finally is emerging from what has been an assault by the left and the fake news media.
And as he gets stronger, the Democrats get weaker as they basically see who can get furthest to the left, and there are 20-some-odd candidates. This is a very important decision for this president to have made today, and it's obviously the wall is a critical factor in stopping an emergency. And as you said, there has been 58 times since the bill was passed in 1976 that we've had national emergencies. I actually oversaw the office, the Intergovernmental Office, when I was in the Reagan White House, which he did it 6 times, Clinton did it 17 times, Obama did it 12 times, George W. Bush did it 13 times. So it's not like there hasn't been national emergencies in the past.
And this national emergency, James, great contested debate for years now over immigration, illegal immigration, and border security. The declaration of the national emergency and the president's action, this will settle part of that debate. That is, that there will be border security. It's I think, it's just breathtaking to many that there would be a debate about a superpower, any nation, that would not be automatically defending its borders.
Well, he obviously has not been able to persuade a majority in the Congress. They don't agree at the moment, even though they may have said earlier it was a crisis. They don't agree at the moment. And so you'd like this to go through the normal legislative process. But
why would we? The normal legislative process has been a disaster. We have been watching this since 1986, when amnesty was passed. We have seen border security erode. We've seen lives devastated and destroyed by drugs that are coming across, methamphetamine, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl. The majority of those deadly drugs, 70,000 opiate overdoses a year. How can anyone in good conscience not want to control that border and stop the import of those deadly drugs alone? Forget illegal immigration, terrorists, you name it, sex trafficking. Those deaths alone should be enough to want to secure the border for any American.
Well, I think you want to get funding the way our Constitution sets it out and get the approval of the Congress, or seek to punish your opponents at the next election. I think he has an argument. The House of Representatives is probably going to sue. He has a law.
It's called the National Emergencies Act of 1976, giving him that power.
I agree with you. He's on a threshold level. The inability to defend a border, to maintain the integrity of a border, does seem like national security.
Does that seem like you'd be a little concerned about a president who didn't want to protect the national sovereignty?
Well, you do have to be concerned about a precedent. Well, we saw Bill Clinton declaring 17 national emergencies. Do you want to expand the ability of a president to do that?
James, President Obama, of those 58 that Ed just referenced, President Obama wrote 12 executive orders. 3 orders already by this president. 31 of those executive orders over those administrations are still active, which means succeeding presidents have had to sign those every 6 months in order to keep them in effect.
Right.
This is a historical precedent. It is without question his lawful prerogative to issue such an executive order. We're going to take this up in greater detail, the politics of it, the economics of it as well. Importantly, all 3 of our panel tonight will be back with us as we continue to discuss what has been a great day for America and a great day for this White House. Up next, the coup d'etat was real. The effort to overthrow a president, to intervene in a presidential election. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe admits the plot to undermine this president began almost immediately, part of it after James Comey was fired, much of it long before that. We take that up after the break. Fox legal analyst Greg Jarrett joins us next. Stay with us. CBS News that he opened an investigation of obstruction of justice targeting President Trump. And he says he and other politically corrupt members of the Justice Department leadership held talks about actually removing the president from office and invoking the 25th Amendment.
I was very concerned that I was able to put the Russia case on absolutely solid ground in an indelible fashion, that were I removed quickly or reassigned or fired, that the case could not be closed or vanish in the night without a trace. I wanted to make sure that our case was on solid ground.
Wow. His case on solid ground. The president responded to McCabe. He tweeted this today saying, disgraced FBI acting director Andrew McCabe pretends to be, quote, a poor little angel, when in fact he was a big part of the crooked Hillary scandal and the Russia hoax, a puppet for leaking James Comey. IG report on McCabe, devastating part of the insurance policy in case I won, said the president. The president has to be just absolutely beside himself in watching this, but in another quarter, also rejoicing in the fact that the truth is emerging. It just the opportune moment. A couple of years earlier would have been better, I acknowledge. Joining me now, Greg Jarrett, Fox Business legal analyst. Great to have you with us. This is riveting. This is revelatory. McCabe, I love the tone he's taken. He looks like a teenage Boy Scout there. I can't imagine that he would try to overthrow the President of the United States, would bear witness to Rod Rosenstein actually wanting to invoke the 25th Amendment, actually willing to wear wire to take down a president.
Think about this. Every American should be frightened that a handful of unelected individuals in law enforcement thought they knew better than the American public that elected Donald Trump. And so they plotted in an illegal, illicit scheme to depose President Trump, to overthrow him, the equivalent of a coup, because they didn't like the man or his policies.
There was
That's
not
frightening.
one, and to put it, I think, into just a little different context, there were no facts for them to make the assumption that there was any possibility that there was collusion. It was a phony, trumped-up, excuse the expression, narrative that they used to go after the President of the United States.
Well, the Russia hoax is now disassembling, and we're beginning to peel back the layers of the onion and finding out the level of corruption, which is really quite astonishing.
This is a historic moment for this president, who, as I said, has been under investigation literally every day that he's been in office.
He was sued his second day in office for emoluments. He hadn't even unpacked his bags yet, and he was being sued.
This is the beginning of, I think, a historic turn for this president. He is emerging as the victor on every issue that he has confronted, every challenge he's confronted. Momentum moving toward 2020. McCabe, Rosenstein, who had lied, but who was the author of the memorandum that led to the firing.
He volunteered to write that memo.
It doesn't suit me that he suddenly he became a coward in the face of the Democratic Party's outcry. This is a man with unknown motivations. It is far more complex, I think, than we know right now.
He is manipulative and nefarious. He continues to hide his own wrongful conduct by obstructing lawful subpoenas from Congress. He has a lot to answer for. It will not end well for Rod Rosenstein or Andrew McCabe.
And Paul Ryan, who would not permit subpoenas. He has a lot to answer for as well.
He'll be back driving the Wienermobile.
Yeah.
That was his previous job.
Well, as we turn to the idea of investigating the investigators. William Barr, the new Attorney General, sworn in just this evening. Is he going to investigate? Do you have faith?
He said he would. In his confirmation hearing, Lindsey Graham put it squarely to him.
Do you have confidence that he will actually go after this group of nefarious criminals who lead the Justice Department, who led the Justice Department and the FBI?
I think he's always been an honest and honorable man, so when he said in his confirmation hearing he would investigate them, I believe he will.
All right. Greg Jarrett, good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And Greg has a new book, a brand new updated version of the Russia hoax, bringing to bear the latest developments. He's going to be doing several of these because this thing is really taking off now. We recommend it to you highly. The Russian hoax. Greg Jarrett, thank you. Up next, the left-wing national media in hysterics tonight over the president's plan to declare a national emergency.
This is currently Congress surrendering their principal authority under the Constitution, the power of the purse, if they allow this rogue action to take place.
The president has punked the nation, taking the news cycle hostage.
You're going about trying to get your wall in a way that sets a bad precedent.
This is not going to be the end of the discussion. It's the beginning of the discussion, the debate, and probably almost certainly the court fight over that national emergency.
We'll have a lot more on that, like the facts, the history, the Constitution. Ed Rollins joins us here next. But before we go to break, a look at the $22 trillion U.S. national debt. It's official. We're going places we've never been before. 22 trillion plus and rising quickly. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Katie, you say that Omar's comments are both not anti-Semitic, and you didn't have a problem, I imagine, with the first comments.
No, I mean, I have a problem with smearing her
fine.
as an anti-Semite. She said something, this is how anti-Semitic it was, apparently. She said something that Thomas Friedman, major supporter of Israel, has said. Thomas Friedman said at the New York Times that an applause that Bibi Netanyahu received was paid for by the Israel lobby. An Israel lobby, any lobby is a lobby. A lobby uses money to influence politics and politicians. That's what AIPAC does. AIPAC wants you to know that. AIPAC knows that. Everyone who donates to AIPAC knows that. This is literally stating a fact. There's nothing anti-Semitic in there. What is anti-Semitic, though, if you want to talk about anti-Semitic tropes and playing into those, is what Kevin McCarthy, who along with Donald Trump is going after Ilhan Omar, and what he said in a tweet that he deleted was that that Steyer and Bloomberg and Soros were buying the election. Now, that is an anti-Semitic trope that he definitely played into. He deleted the tweet, but he never apologized.
So
and
billionaires
Trump,
can't buy an election.
Well,
then I get billionaires who are liberal. That's cool. But if you're a conservative, you're spending too much money.
Wait,
all right, Katie.
Also Trump,
Katie, Katie, take a breath. Take a breath. Let it out. It's okay. Take a breath, Katie. No one can understand if you talk over me, sweetie.
Crazy. I get annoyed by hypocrisy and Islamophobia.
Well, I get annoyed when people talk over it because our viewers can't actually hear what we're saying. So I want them to hear you, and then I want them to hear everybody. Okay, Matt didn't interrupt you, so try to just take a breath. All right, this is the Washington Jerusalem Post today. Don't roll your eyes. My daughter does that, and it gets really annoying. Ilhan Omar to keynote event alongside anti-Semite days after AIPAC rant. Omar will be speaking alongside a well-known Islamic Relief USA official, Yusuf Abdullah, who has openly advocated for violence against Jews and has shared anti-Semitic sentiments on social media. Are you also a defender of his, Katie?
I don't know about his bio. I do know that
Chuck
Schumer has said things that are very Islamophobic, for instance, and no one asked him to apologize. That's the problem, is that there's this double standard.
But no pattern. You see no pattern among some of these newer congresswomen
if you speak out against
who seem
Israel,
to equate money
you're
with
equated
Jews.
with anti-Semitism. Chuck Schumer, for instance, said that there's no peace in the Middle East because Palestinians don't follow the Torah,
Katie,
which is theocracy.
Her tweet in 2012. I'm just trying to understand. I want to get to Matt, but I'm trying to understand your level of support for her views, okay? Because when I hear Jews control the money or anything hinting at that, then that's a trigger. The left loves to hear about triggers.
Right,
well, that triggers a lot of people who remember the Holocaust. It triggers them, and I think justifiably so.
I have a question.
Here's what she said in 2012. Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. Now, Matt, I would think most people would say that was anti-Semitic. If we can't agree as Americans that that's an anti-Semitic comment, then I don't know what the heck we're doing on cable news anymore, because to me, that's kind of obvious.
And this is what people have done. The reason why there is a Zionist movement and the reason why there's a state of Israel is because the Jewish people were almost exterminated from the face of the globe, and they did not have a sanctuary place they could go to have their own state. There are plenty of Muslim states. There are plenty of Arab states. There wasn't a state for Jews to be able to call their own. And by the way, it's there. It's there. And by the way, it's there, and it's their land. So I think it's awfully important, and people shade this into this question about the only reason why people are standing up for the state of Israel is because of, quote, the Benjamins. And I'm Christian, but I'm offended about that because they're a democracy, an important part of the world. They're a strategic ally to the United States. We don't have to agree with absolutely every decision their government makes, but it is wrong to attack them as a people.
Well, no one attacked them as a people, luckily.
I just saw that tweet.
AIPAC. I'm a Jew. I'm a person. No one attacked me because I don't support AIPAC. Millions of Jews don't support AIPAC, and that's why there are all these alternatives.
But this is the problem.
Because Jews like me are really tired of having AIPAC, which is a very small but very powerful elite minority representation of Jews. It's very tiresome to have them claim to speak for all Jews and conflate Jewish identity with unquestioning support of Israel, which is an anti-Semitic group in itself.
Let's just say this, Lord. This is the big dynamic.
It would be nice if Donald Trump had actually condemned the people in Charlottesville. And you, Matt, you work in this communications,
if I could please just answer.
Why didn't he condemn the people in Charlottesville?
Let's stay on.
Okay, you guys, I gotta tell you, guys, stop.
Jews in his statement. That's anti-Semitism.
I love having a spirited debate. And Katie, I actually love that you came on the show. I like hearing your point of view. I really do. It's really hard for the viewers to get what either of you are saying when we're talking over each other. And I mean, other than interrupting you, I don't know how to get it. But I think I got the point from both of you, and I really appreciate the fact that you both came on. We'll be covering this. We want to try to be fair about it. The left, by the way, has told us that we aren't allowed to talk about the need for immigrants to assimilate into the American culture. That, too, is racist. Well, that's especially true as it relates to the public school system. The question is, why is assimilation, even in the school system, now controversial? Well, the reason is simple, but grossly punitive. They wish to inoculate the entire public school system in the United States, and thus the powerful teachers' unions, from criticism, even if it means a diminished product for the kids. The Center for Immigration Studies recently found 700 immigrant-saturated school districts where half of the new students are from immigrant households. Quote, the number of children from immigrant households and schools is now so high in some areas that it raises profound questions about assimilation. Immigration has added enormously to the number of public school students who are in poverty and the number who speak a foreign language. Now, this cannot help but to create significant challenges for schools, often in areas already struggling to educate students who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. Joining us now is the man behind this study, Steve Camarata, from the Center for Immigration Studies. Steve, now, people are going to say the fact that we're even talking about this is mean-spirited and it's anti-Hispanic. And I will say, you know, we're calling you on your you-know-what if you say that, because this is about kids and learning and the wonders of America. So what do the public education folks, and what, they don't seem to care about this? They don't seem to understand the enormity of the problem? What's going on?
Well, look, everybody agrees that people we let into the country, we have to educate them or their children, right? I mean, that's an important part of the American dream. But it doesn't answer the fundamental question of how many people should we let in the country? How do we enforce our immigration laws against illegal immigration? There are about 1 out of every 4 kids in public school today is from an immigrant family. About 1/3 of all the kids in poverty in public school today are from an immigrant family. Even in a state like Minnesota, you're looking at about 49% of all the kids in public school in poverty, I should say 40% of all the kids in public school in poverty in the state of Minnesota come from an immigrant family. So these are important questions. A more moderate pace of immigration, enforcing our laws, a more moderate pace of legal immigration, these things would tend to take a lot of pressure off of public schools, making it easier to educate the kids already here, which I think most people agree is important.
Well, Steve, I think in St. Paul, there is obviously a very large Somali population. The largest outside of Somalia in the whole world is in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I think about 80,000 people. We're talking about Ilhan Omar. I think she represents that community. But the question is, when you have both a welfare state and you have public schools that have pulled back somewhat for a variety of reasons for inculcating sort of traditional American historical values, the great books, all the things that kind of bring us all together in this common community of understanding. That is a tricky mix, is it not? I mean, open borders, welfare state, public schools that teach kids, in some cases, to really hate the American founding. That's a nightmare for assimilation.
Right. During the last great wave, for example, of immigration around 1900, there was a much greater consensus among our elites, including our public schools, including the people who ran the public schools in the big cities where the immigrants settle, that there was an idea that we should Americanize immigrants. And that doesn't just mean that they learn English, though incredibly important. It also means that they come to identify with their country, come to see America's founding as the founding of their country as well, and not see that as something that dead white men did. The other thing is the numbers are so big. One of the ways immigration assimilation works is that immigrants and their kids interact with so many kids from native backgrounds that assimilation becomes kind of a foregone conclusion. But in many cases, most of the kids are from immigrant backgrounds.
Well, and also it's made easier to not to be in your enclave when there's Univision and Telemundo and all these, and they're well-produced networks and technology, and it's well produced, and I get things change. But Ronald Reagan, in his final address to the American people as president, talked about the need to teach history, the important moments in American history, so we all can understand. Thanks so much, Steve. And it isn't just Republicans knocking down the Russian collusion narrative anymore. Wait till you hear what the Democrats have now revealed. Charade up next.
Almost 2 years of investigation, they found absolutely no collusion between Trump and the Russia, which I could have told a lot of people, and which I have been saying to a lot of people. This has never happened to it. The Democrats know it's a hoax. This is a political game. So now the Russia thing is dead.
Well, President Trump noting in my exclusive interview last night that Republicans on the Senate Intel Committee have found zero Russian collusion. But what about the Democrats? Well, NBC News revealing, they didn't want to do it today, that after 2 years and 200 interviews and your tax dollars wasted, even they had to admit, quote, let's read it, uncovered no direct evidence of a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. Here now to discuss, Saul Weisenberg, former deputy independent counsel in the Whitewater investigation, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Saul, how different might Mueller's conclusions be, however, from the Senate Intel Committee's report?
Oh, I don't think they'll be any different at all. You have to remember he has far more power, far more investigative power, subpoena power, power to compel witnesses than the Senate does. And he's got a very highly trained professional staff with him. And it's been very clear to knowledgeable observers for quite some time that he did not have that case. And the reason you can tell is by looking at the various plea agreements that have been signed by people who've pled guilty. They are all crimes either that have nothing to do with Trump and a collusion conspiracy, or they have to do with lying to Mueller. So I think that there's nothing surprising whatsoever about this, just surprising the way that Congressman Schiff tried to spin it.
All right. I have to bring this up to you, Byron, because when I think of the individuals, and Saul, you and I over the months have been talking about all these individuals, as has Byron been writing about them, from the vaunted intel community, like John Brennan, who have gone on television night after night after night trashing this president and giving legitimacy to the initial start of this investigation. Now, I want to play something from you. This is from John Brennan, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's watch.
There's collusion in plain sight. Donald Trump at the end of July openly called on Russian intelligence to find Hillary Clinton's emails. There were engagements at the Trump Tower. There were the back and forth between various individuals who were affiliated with the Trump campaign and Russian individuals. That collusion, I think, is quite obvious and apparent.